Transition was the theme I encountered the most in my listening this year. The 2010s are coming to an end, and this year, many artists found themselves in a state of transition. Maybe it was something personal, like losing a loved one or partner. Maybe it was the move to a new sound or to a new label after years of internet buzz. Maybe it was concern over what our world will look like in the next 10, 20 years. Maybe it was or maybe it was a long-established act now realizing that they're at the point where they can do whatever the hell they want. No matter how you slice it, boy was this year great for music. I actually had more difficulty making this list than I did my top 10 albums of the 2010s, which is coming in January, by the way. So I'll offer the same disclaimer that I did with my list from last year. Don't hold me to these specific rankings. These are my 10 favorite albums of the year, but they could easily move and change as I re-listen and discover new things. The only reason I'm putting it in a list like this is because I find the format pretty fun. So, let's get into it. Number 10. Man, it's been a while since I've done a list video. How do I even do this?
Step 1. Pick an album you listened to in the past year.
Okay.
Step 2. Re-listen to make sure you still enjoy it. Step 3. Write out your initial thoughts. Step 4. Research the opinions of others. Step 5. Realize Buffalo Staple did the same intro in his review of this album.
Shoot!
Step 6. Scratch all that and just get into why you enjoyed the album.
First up on the list is the debut studio project from Arizona rap trio Injury Reserve, a group who built their reputation off a series of highly regarded mixtapes throughout the 2010s. A huge part of their appeal has been their production, courtesy of Parker Corey, and man do these tracks slap. The sparse vibraphone and hand claps on Jawbreaker, the warbly piano on Gravy and Biscuits, the car skids on Jailbreak the Tesla, everything in the production manages to strike the right blend of acerbity and harmony. The verses are also quite good across the board. Richie with a T and Steppa T Groggs maintain a playful confidence for most of the record, with guests like JPEG Mafia, Rico Nasty, Freddie Gibbs adding great contributions. But what really gets this album to this slot is the last third of the record, where Steppa and Richie take a more introspective turn, detailing their own personal struggles. It makes this record feel so much more empowering, and it culminates in Three-Man Weave, a glorious victory lap of a track, not just for the album, but for their whole career so far. I'm really looking forward to seeing where they go from here.
Congratulations, you've made one top 10 entry. Repeat 9 times to make a top 10 list.
Number 9. One of my resolutions for this year was to see more live music, and I think I did pretty well seeing it through. I saw Casey Musgraves in January, I went to Boston Calling where I got to see a bunch of great artists, plus Lil Nas X for a hot sec. I saw The National in May, Carly Rae Jepsen in July, Bon Iver in October. There was, however, one band that I was planning on seeing but didn't because I got sick, and I was really bummed because of the great album they had just put out. Similar to Injury Reserve, Brooklyn-based rock band Charlie Bliss made their major label debut this year after breaking out with a lean, mean 2017 record called Guppy. And for what it's worth, they could have just redone Guppy again, and I would have dug it. But Young Enough manages to expand on their established sound while still retaining their quality hooks and sharp lyrics, courtesy of lead singer Ava Hendricks. I'll occupy your nation, fool! The album lyrically goes to some pretty dark places. Tracks like Bleach, Chat Room, Hard to Believe, all muse on a world that feels like it's crumbling apart one day at a time, and how small and insignificant we as individuals can feel in the face of it all. But Lord, the compositions here feel anything but. Blown to Bits, Capacity, the title track, these sound anthemic. The kind of songs you blast on full volume to make you feel like you can take on anything. The combination of these two make for a stellar sophomore album, and I can't wait to see them top it. Also, did you know the lead guitarist was Dash from The Incredibles? Number 8. Religion. Am I right? That stuff can be crazy sometimes. Like just last week I was going to church and there was a woman pole dancing, but then the ceiling opened up and there came down a metallic dragon with that same woman's face on it, and then that woman put her foot through the dragon's face. Moral of the story, I'm never drinking the wine again.
Didn't I do it for you? Why don't I do it for you?
FKA Twigs came roaring back this year with her first project in years, and y'all better get on your knees and repent, else ye be swallowed whole. Twigs' music has always excelled at conveying that. She speaks about consuming and being consumed, while creating soundscapes that themselves consume the listener, balancing harsh electronics with delicate acoustic touches. Magdalene is no different, but it's also supplemented by romantic sorrow and religious symbols. Tracks like Holy Terrain, Magdalene, Mirrored Heart are all testament to this. Of course, I can't speak about a Twigs album without bringing up her voice, and this album may be her greatest vocal work yet. Sure, her soprano is breathtaking and plenty of the album lets her flex it, but my favorite moments are where she uses her lower register, becoming submerged within the textures, such as on Fallen Alien. And Cellophane, oh Cellophane. I actually don't dig Cellophane all that much. I mean, it's a good song and it's a very effective album closer. I'm not hyped about it like a lot of people are. But regardless, Twigs has built an everlasting monument to heartbreak and holiness with this album. Number 7, Pop is Dead. Long live Pop 2.
I just wanna go back to 1999. Take a ride to
Fun fact, Charlie is Charli XCX's first album since Sucker, which you might remember for being the album that had Boom Clap. Can you imagine someone hearing that and then going straight to this album and hearing like Shake It or 2099? Now, of course, it's not like she was gone since Boom Clap. Far from it. She's been quite busy with a line of mixtapes and singles, most notably the distorted, if messy, self-redefinition that was Pop 2. With that context, Charli is essentially the sonic summation of Charli's past 5 years. With this album, Charli and executive producer A.G. Cook pay homage to pop of the past while using it to look ahead and create an eccentric vision of what pop could be. Put on a song like Blame It On Your Love or Thoughts or Shake It, and you'll be hit with familiar staples of the genre, rattling hi-hats, digital hand claps, bright keyboards, run through the PC music processor with twisted vocal effects and walls upon walls of synths. Charli continues to be an excellent vocalist, which is proven by a stretch of solo cuts in the middle, and she's joined by a veritable cornucopia of guests, each song seeming to have been molded to best reflect what they bring. Warm creates an unobtrusive bounce for Haim's signature syncopation. Blame It On Your Love brings just enough boisterous energy to contain Lizzo. Click and Shake It are posse cuts verging on straight up deconstructive art pieces. Gone featuring Christine and the Queens. That's it, that's the sentence. Charli is a true statement of what pop has been, is, and what it could be. Pop 1, Pop 2, and dare I say Pop 3, all rolled into one. Number 6. There's something to be said for slow burns, records that don't really click with you on first listen, but have some intangible quality that keeps you coming back again and again. And this year was chock full of them for me. One minute you're listening to something that you think is just in one ear and out the other, and next thing you know, the first time I heard Big Thief's UFOF, the first of 2 records they released in 2019, I was underwhelmed. There was no real sense of progression or development with the songs. It all sounded aimless. But I kept coming back to it. Why? Well, first, lead singer Adrian Lenker, who demonstrates an obscene emotional range throughout, going from intimate whispers to what sounds like her ripping her own throat out. Second, the songs, which I initially thought were formless, began to lock in more. The interplay between each member showed more depth, especially on tracks like UFOF, Century, and Jenny. It was at this point when I learned that many of these songs were written hours before recording, and some they only recorded once. Then it clicked with me. These songs weren't aimless. Big Thief managed to capture themselves discovering these songs alongside the listener. Given that the album, to quote Lenker, is about making friends with the unknown, it's fitting that many of these songs hold a mystical quality to them, which hasn't lost its luster even months after its release. Go listen to Cattails and tell me you don't love everything in the goddamn universe. Number 5. Though specific details are scarce, the 13th century saw several advances in music. A greater move by composers away from the church and towards secularism, more pieces making use of polyphony. Most surprisingly, though, is that this is when we saw the first instance of the genre we know as metal. Here it is now.
I promise to think before I speak, to be wary of who I give my energy to, because it is needed for a cause.
Alabama Shakes frontwoman Brittany Howard struck out with her own solo debut this year. You know what else she struck? gold. For those of you familiar with the Shakes, it should be no surprise that Howard is a remarkably gifted musician, but what makes the album so special though is its introspection. Sure, tracks like History Repeats, Stay High, and Baby would fit in well with the Shakes' eventual, I hope, third LP, but how would you work in a track like He Loves Me, which details Britney's own experience loving God? How would you throw in Georgia, which takes on multiple meanings depending on what you view Georgia as? How would you fit in a track like Goathead, describing an incident where someone left a goat head as a racially charged message in the back of Howard's dad's car? This record is Howard's through and through, and she absolutely makes the most of it lyrically. And sonically, don't even get me started on the music. You know what? That's it. You made me get started on the music. The music is great. The tight guitar and bass work on He Loves Me, the massive drop at the end of Georgia, the restrained tenderness of Stay High and Short and Sweet, the chill wave closer of Run to Me, every single second of 13th century metal. The crew Howard features on this record is insane, but I want to shout out two people. Nate Smith, the drummer on most of the album who complements every track perfectly, and Sean Everett, who mixed and recorded the album. He also worked on all these. I dare you to find a better sounding album that came out this year. Bless you, Brittany Howard. Number 4.
I think I'm falling in love. This time I
Tyler, the Creator, started this decade as the leader of the internet's favorite shock rap outfit and ended it as neo-soul's foremost innovator.
Growth.
Now you may remember in my quick review of this album, I said I wasn't super into Flower Boy. I even died for it. But I am super into Igor. Tyler's only gotten better at his newfound style of fuzzed out soul rap, to the point where calling this a rap album doesn't feel right. Songs like Earthquake, New Magic Wand, Gone Gone Thank You don't feel like some rap songs, no, not that kind, but rather outlets for Tyler to experiment with his production and vocal delivery. And the guests that he brings out act less like guests and more like added textures.
Ain't got body roll, don't give a fuck by no. Ain't like for my lord, then might call my lord.
The different directions Tyler takes here make this an album more focused on communicating its narrative through sound and less through proper song structure. Speaking of narrative, what also makes Igor stand out is the story it tells, involving the main character falling in love with a boy he can't have. The first half of the record establishes a love triangle conflict, sending our protagonist on a journey filled with frustration, loathing, and obsession. Once he realizes the hold this boy has on him, the second half sees him adopt a new persona and attempt to move on. At least until the closer Are We Still Friends, where our hero pleads with the boy to still have at least a platonic relationship. By the end, he has chosen to become emotionally subservient to his love interest. Oh, like the guy. Number 3. Leading up to this video, I got really into thinking about why lists are so popular when it comes to music discussion. Music is such a subjective art form, and I've seen people say that it can kind of remove the fun and magic of music to put it into a ranked list, especially considering how wide and diverse the music landscape is right now. And I get that, I do, but I like lists. Human beings like lists. It's a really fun way to break down the music that mattered most to us over the course of a year, and there can be a good amount of suspense as you get closer to number 1, you know? I don't know. I think I take myself too serious. It's not that serious. Not gonna lie, if this video had come out about 4 months earlier, this probably would have been number 1. Which doesn't make it flawless. Some tracks feel weaker outside of the context of the album, and it can feel a bit long in places, but let me explain why this album works so well for me. At the most basic stage of listening, this album just sounds good. Vampire Weekend have been in the game for over a decade, and they have both the songwriting chops and personnel to realize their vision, even if founding member and producer Rostam isn't in the band anymore. Harmony Hall, This Life, How Long, Stranger, Sunflower, they've awakened the inner dad rock jam band they always had in them, and the results are across the board great. So you're having a good and fun time with these happy songs, but then you get to the meaning of these songs, and the album as a whole, and you realize this thing is kinda depressing. For most of the album, Ezra frames these songs as a dialogue between two people working through a tumultuous time in their relationship. He asks often if it's still possible to love in a time where it can feel like the whole world is falling apart, sinking to the bottom of the sea, an avalanche coming, the genocidal feeling that beats in every heart. And by the end, his answer is, yeah? I guess so? what's the other option? The whole album has this undertone of complacency in the face of a greater apocalypse, which might make sense since all the Vampire Weekend guys are now married. And much like Young Enough, that contradiction of upbeat songs with morally gray lyrics makes this an utterly captivating listen. Also, I liked Danielle Haim on it for the most part. Number 2. Going back to the idea of transitions that I brought up earlier, here's an SNL clip from about 7 years ago.
Ladies and gentlemen, Lana Del Rey.
This is the first live TV performance by Lana Del Rey, an artist who had blown up because of her viral hit Video Games. The performance is not good. It sounds stiff, and Lana's clearly nervous. And boy, do I remember what people were saying afterwards. Lana's career is over. She has no talent. She'll never make anything good. Fast forward to now, and I bet those same people are saying something very different.
'Cause you're just a man, it's just what you do.
Lana Del Rey has had one heck of a decade. She was arguably one of the first stars to break out solely from internet buzz. Her hushed vocal delivery went on to influence several of today's biggest stars, and oh, the think pieces she's wrought. There's something about her style that resonated with us in the 2010s, and if there's any work of hers that realized the full potential of said style, Norman effing Rockwell is that effing album. Much like FOTB, NFR is an album about desensitization in the face of a looming destruction. Much of Lana's work has been about being desensitized, mostly in the romantic sense. Songs like the title track, Venice Bitch, The Next Best American Record, Happiness is a Butterfly all reflect that lyrical theme. But the true quality of this album comes from her tying this hazed, unfeeling aesthetic she's perfected to the larger social climate. The Greatest is the perfect encapsulation of this, a song that manages to be a haunting gut punch to the culture while having the lyric, "The culture is lit and I had a ball." You can't get away with that. And yet Lana did. And musically, the 60s era cabaret pop that Lana's adopted here works like gangbusters. I give major credit to Lana for that, but I also want to shout out producer extraordinaire Jack Antonoff for his deft touch. Sometimes his producing doesn't work for me, but when it does, oh Lord, does it work. This album is the sound of the last singer-songwriter night on Earth as the outside world is reduced to rubble. It's the end of La La Land where Ryan Gosling plays out the perfect happy ending, except instead, it's LA burning to the ground. This album is lit, and I had a ball, and wow, that line does not work when I say it. All right, before we get to number 1, let's knock out a couple of honorable mentions. I limited it to 10 because otherwise we'd be here for a while. Yeah, I know. It didn't make it on somehow, but don't take that as a slight against it. It's a damn fine pop record. Also, she kills live.
Light years away.
Same with Dedicated. I was reasonably sure this would make it in the top 10 for a good while. At the end, it didn't, but like all national albums, it's still great, especially in its back half. So Far So Fast is one of my favorite songs of the year.
I keep looking for something.
This was another one that grew on me over the year. I really dug Amber Bain's knack for atmosphere while still retaining solid hooks. Definitely check it out. Man, this one got slept on so hard. Or so soft, whichever one is more severe in this metaphor. Some of the best rock bops this year. This record beat me up, and I liked it. Though the production can be overbearing at times, Sturgill and his crew sure do know how to write barn burners. Speaking of records that beat me up, this Ferocious debut was an absolute treat. I guess you could say it moves with a magnificent purpose. It's so magnificent, it's so... Good lord, these strings. I want to do a whole video just on the string arrangements on this album. Oh, and Angel Olsen's a great songwriter and singer.
You're the only one who knows me, babe.
This was Caroline Polachek's first record under her own name, and much like Brittany Howard, she struck gold. Some of these songs are so hot they're hurting my feelings.
Oh my God, babe, I'm your number one.
This record also got slept on, and I would know because I didn't check it out until months after its release. Still, if you like synth pop, you're doing a massive disservice if you don't check this out. Like I said in my quick review, I prefer the all-out bombast of 22 A Million, but Bout and his Yves Ayers managed to blend their past 3 studio records into the best possible whole. Also, this album translates so well to a live setting.
Look back, blood on the ground.
A wholly terrifying listening experience, complete with great bangers, great lines from Daveed Diggs, and a closing track that's just 16 minutes of a piano on fire. I, Daveed Dig. This almost made it on the list, but y'all, it's such a gargantuan, emotionally draining experience. I can't see myself going back to it much. Still, great album though. And with those done, number 1. There's a common theme that runs through my top 3 albums of the year, and that theme is love in the face of an impending something. There are records that detail the struggles of maintaining strong relationships when they feel like they're crumbling, just as the whole world feels like it's crumbling. Vampire Weekend took a more eased approach with a darker underbelly. Lana Del Rey found tension and angst within arrangements that could vary between sparse and expansive. The third album, though, has that conflict, maintaining love in a crumbling world, but manages to find hope, both lyrically and musically. And it is my number 1 album of 2019. Yeah, so I guess some of you caught on for my awards video because I think this album is phenomenal. Natalie Merring crafted an album this year that speaks of love consistently burdened by the weight of the modern world through the framing of alternate dimensions and in-between spaces. Andromeda and Everyday tackle modern dating with its distractions and disappointments. Movies details the false promises films can give us when we're younger. A Lot's Gonna Change is an opulent ode to the boundless joy of childhood and how we reconcile that with the often painful reality of adulthood. Yet for how grounded in reality these lyrics may be, the music sounds euphoric and even hopeful. Merring's take on 70s-inspired chamber pop is a genuine treat that reveals new aspects with each listen. Gorgeous string arrangements, thoughtfully placed layers of synths, choir arrangements inspired by Merring's own experiences in choir. She pulls in so many different textures to make something ethereal and otherworldly while still battling the same feelings and existential dread that we all do. If Norman effing Rockwell sounded like the concept of love being consumed by flames, Titanic Rising sounds like the concept of love adapting to the flames and transforming into something different but beautiful in its own way. And even if it doesn't survive, well, to quote a movie that inspired the album's title,
"Gentlemen, it has been a privilege playing with you tonight."
I want to thank all of these artists for putting out such great music this year, and I encourage you all to check them out if you haven't already. I also encourage you to support the artists that you enjoyed most this year, whether it be by buying a CD, a shirt, a vinyl, tour ticket, even just sharing their stuff online, whatever you can. And finally, I want to thank all of you who have joined me, not just on this video, but also on this channel just in general in 2019. I'm really excited for what 2020 is going to bring, but for now, Happy New Year, and I'll see you in January.